Here we go. Humanities 101 and NACHOS reminds you that you are enough. Now we join Dr. Dutch with the Neuro-Affirming Conversation Hour for outreach and support.
Welcome back, Nacho Knots, to another cozy gathering of Nachos, the Neuro-Affirming Conversation Hour for outreach and support. And as we reach the 10th episode of the 3rd season, the world outside begins to quiet itself. The trees are bare. The air carries that crisp promise of snow delivered yesterday in some parts of mid-Michigan, like here. And everything seems to slow down, just enough to remind us to look, to breathe, and to see differently. As Marcel Proust once wrote, the real voyage of discovery consists not in seeking new landscapes, but in having new eyes. There's something about that first snowfall that brings that truth to life. It transforms familiar sidewalks and streets into something unfamiliar and new. Not because the world has changed, but because we have changed. We look at it with wonder again, like we're allowed to start over. The same branches that looked lifeless yesterday now shimmer with quiet grace under a dusting of white snow. The same routine path to work or school or some community center becomes a path of small miracles. In the same way, winter invites us into a different kind of discovery, not one of miles or movements, but one of perspectives. It asks us, what might we see differently if we slowed down? If we honored rest as deeply as we celebrate productivity? If we saw ourselves not as stuck in the cold, but as preparing the soil for spring. So today, as the snow begins to fall and the year folds into quiet months, we'll take this hour and this time to explore what it means to see our lives, our work, and our neurodivergent journeys with new eyes. Because sometimes the most profound adventures aren't the ones we take somewhere new. They're the ones that we teach us to see what's always been there, right under our nose. And this idea comes from a writer who spent his entire life chasing meaning in the smallest of moments. Marcel Proust. Proust was a French novelist and a philosopher of memory, best known for his 7-volume masterpiece, In Search of Lost Time. His work is less about plot and more about perception, how a taste, a scent, and even a sound can awaken an entire universe of memory within us. In a sense, Proust was one of the first to treat introspection as an act of discovery. He's also famous for something a little more playful, what we now call the Proust questionnaire. Long before BuzzFeed quizzes or personality inventories, Proust answered a series of questions designed to reveal a person's true character. Questions about happiness, courage, friendship, and fear. His answers were so thoughtful and revealing that they've become a cultural tradition. To this day, artists, thinkers, and students alike revisit the Proust questionnaire as a tool for reflection, to understand not just who they are, but how they see. And that's where we'll focus today. Because as we near the end of this semester and this season, it's not about rushing towards something new. It's about seeing with new eyes. Like Proust, we'll take time to look inward, to ask reflective questions about who we are becoming, what we value, and how our neurodivergent and neurodiverse perspectives help us notice things others might miss. As we begin to prepare for our final project, we'll be taking a page from Proust's book, literally and figuratively. We'll explore how self-reflection can be both an art and a practice, how writing and observation can uncover truths about how we move through the world. And maybe, just maybe, like that first snowfall, we'll find that discovery isn't about somewhere else. It's about finally seeing where we are already. So, as we begin preparing for the final project in the final days of the semester and of fall, we'll be taking a page again from this book. So we're going to look at how, right, this reflection and this practice uncovers those truths. And I really think this is the work of a humanities class. This is what we're all about. So I want you to picture this with me, Nacho Knots. Our class, our community is gathered in a quiet circle of curiosity, care, and complexity. In the center of that circle sits Marcel Proust's famous list of 20 questions, a Victorian relic that once claimed to reveal a person's true nature. Of course, we know better. Human identity isn't a single snapshot. It's a shifting mosaic glimmering differently in every light. But still, there's something powerful in that old idea of naming. A set of prompts that help us notice which parts of ourselves step forward when called and which quietly wait in the wings. So that's the spirit of this final project. We're going to use this questionnaire as our foundation, but instead of trying to capture something fixed, some fixed version of who we are or who we think we are, we're going to explore how context reshapes identity. So why bother with a parlor game from another century? Because answering these questions about joy, fear, regret, or happiness, it helps us pause long enough to hear what's loudest right now. And by sharing our reflections, we'll see how differently the same words, hopes, or worries resonate across lives. And here's how it works. You're going to begin with 2 rounds of answers. First as your present self, and then again as through another lens, either your childhood voice, your future self, your work persona, or your late night inner monologue, that beast that comes alive when the lights go down. The contrast between these 2 voices will become the heart of your final project, which you can present in either of 2 ways. 1, a short creative video that brings your reflections to life, or 2, a thoughtful essay that unfolds your discoveries in words. You'll choose 5 questions where your answers surprised you most and use them as anchors for your project. And this project, whether you're recording or writing, I want you to think about the self-portrait, because it is part self-portrait, part story, and part reflection. I want you to introduce those perspectives, walk us through your 5 question pairs, and share what those shifts reveal about the flexibility of your identity. And then connect your insights to the ideas we've explored this term: self-care, community, neurodiversity, the idea of belonging. And close with a moment that captures the beauty of holding many selves at once. As always, accessibility and clarity matter. For videos, use clear audio, readable captions, and credit all sources and media. For essays, format cleanly, cite your references, and polish your language for clarity and flow, not so much formality. Submit your final project, a video link or an essay link to a Google Drive, along with the short reflection quiz attached to this assignment. So whether you're building, what you're building here isn't just a project. It's a reflection that you can come back to, that you can revisit later as you grow in your personal journey. So you're not just answering these questions, I'm asking you to reframe them. You're showing how self-understanding deepens when we let our identities breathe. So whether you choose to face the camera or fill the page, approach it the same way you'd approach a trusted mirror. Curious, kind, and unafraid of what you might see. And you may not like what you might see, but don't be afraid, because no single frame or sentence can capture who you are. But a thoughtful story can illuminate the dance between all of these different selves. And that, Nacho Knots, brings us right back to Proust's reminder about new eyes. Because whether we explore our stories through writing or film, the real act of discovery happens not in what we record, but in how we begin to see. Having new eyes isn't about changing who we are. It's about noticing what's already there. It's about catching the small glimmers in ordinary days. You know, those small glimmers, the way that light filters through a window you passed 100 times, or a house that you've never seen on that drive to work, or the way your own thoughts sound different when you've listened with compassion instead of critique. When we allow ourselves to look again, the familiar can become sacred. Routine can become revelation. This time of year, as winter settles in and the world grows quieter, we're offered the same invitation. The snow covers everything in that kind of stillness that asks us to slow down and demands of us to look again. To remember that reflection is not retreat, it's recalibration. The earth rests, and in that rest, renewal begins. Maybe our minds need that too. Maybe new eyes aren't something we find, but something we practice. Each time we pause long enough to notice the details that life hides in plain sight, we can do that. So as you work on your project, don't rush to finish it. Let it unfold the way snowfall does, steadily, softly, transforming the landscape bit by bit. Because what matters most isn't how polished it looks at the end, it's how clearly you can see yourself by the time it's done. When you look back at your answers at your video or your final words on the page, I hope you recognize something powerful. That the act of reflection is itself a kind of seeing. And that every time you return to your own story with curiosity, kindness, and courage, you are already discovering new eyes. And for those of you listening who aren't in class, you're just part of the broader NACHOS community, our fellow travelers on this neuro-affirming voyage, this invitation extends for you as well. Please see with new eyes too. Because Proust wasn't just talking about art or academia. He was talking about being human, about the way our perceptions can harden without us realizing it, until a quiet moment or a season of change reminds us that the world is still alive and still shimmering with new possibilities. Having new eyes doesn't require a passport or a plane ticket. It simply requires presence. It only asks of us to be present. And it asks us to look again at the people we love, the places we pass every day, and the patterns we fall into without thinking. It invites us to see the small acts of courage in others, the friend who keeps showing up, the coworker who listens, the stranger who holds the door, and to see the same quiet strengths in ourselves. In neuro-affirming work, this practice of new eyes is everything. It's what allows us to see difference not as a defect, but as human design. To recognize that every brain carries its own rhythm, its own brilliance, and its own way of belonging. When we see with compassion, curiosity, and openness, we create a world that welcomes more ways of being human. So as winter deepens and the year draws close, maybe our challenge is simple: to soften our gaze, to trade judgment for wonder and curiosity, to look again at our own lives, our own communities, and even our own struggles with the kind of tenderness that lets us start anew. Because the real voyage of discovery, the one that Marcel Proust wrote about and the one we live every day, isn't about finding something different out there. It's about remembering how to see what's been right here all along, or right here. And when we talk about seeing, that's what's been here all along. It's not just poetic, it's practical. Because what's here in front of us is the work. The steady, ripple-making, bridge-building work that turns ideas into change. And this week alone, that work takes many forms. On Tuesday, tomorrow, just about this time, I'm going to be delivering a keynote in service at Kettering University in Flint, guiding faculty and staff through how neuro-affirming design strengthens both learning and community. Our friends at Kettering, with the help of the Humanities 101 Foundation, will be launching a Neuro-Affirming Teaching Work Group, a space where educators can collaborate to make classrooms more humane, practical, and flexible for every kind of learner. And that's the work that you have been helping me do. We're going to be sharing strategies, stories, and small design shifts that make a world of difference. And we're going to, along with the engineering world, prove that belonging starts at the blueprint level. Then on Wednesday, my normal, usual campus day, so you will see me grabbing my cookie and coffee, after class and after office hours, I'll be meeting with members of the Dearborn educational and medical community to debrief the Michigan Disability Empowerment Conference. We're going to be celebrating what worked, learning from what didn't, and sketching the outline for the next gathering of voices and advocates who are shaping a neuro-affirming Michigan by 2035. Going to overnight in the city because Thursday morning, I'm going to meet with the AFL-CIO, and I'll be representing Michigan's disability community as they prepare to launch a disability in the trades training program next year. It's going to be a first-of-its-kind effort to make skilled labor more inclusive, from apprenticeship to leadership. And then I'm going to jaunt over on Thursday afternoon in Lansing, working alongside state officials and disability service providers from across Michigan to help finalize the Michigan Developmental Disability Council's 5-year strategic plan. And that's a framework that will influence how our state supports independence, equity, and belonging for years to come. So yes, the voyage of discovery continues, but we don't have to search far. The new eyes we've been talking about, they help us see that work, that change, and that possibility that we seek. And it helps us see it, that it's already here in our classrooms, in our own communities, in our own collective efforts to make this state and this country a place where every brain, every story, and every body belongs. And maybe that's the quiet truth underneath all of this motion: the work, the advocacy, the teaching, the travel. True belonging isn't something we build once and walk away from it. It's something we return to again and again and again, but each time with new eyes. It's not found in the perfect policy or the best event or even the most inspiring keynote. It lives in the small daily practice of choosing connection over convenience, understanding over assumption, and grace over perfection. Belonging asks us to pause, to look up from our calendars and our plans, and remember that every person we meet, including ourselves, is carrying a whole world, no, an entire cosmos inside of them. It asks us to soften our expectations and to listen with care, even when we don't agree. Sometimes it means giving ourselves permission to rest, to let stillness do its quiet healing work, because exhaustion doesn't build belonging. Empathy does. And empathy grows best when we give it time and space to breathe. So as the snow falls and the pace of the season begins to slow, maybe that's our invitation. Like a little letter. And what it asks us to do is to practice belonging not just as something we offer to others, but as something we extend to ourselves, fully and wholly inward. To see ourselves with the same gentleness we so easily give away to others. To notice the ways our bodies, our hearts, and our communities are all asking for warmth, for patience, for grace, and an extra dose of humanity. Seeing with new eyes isn't just about the world around us. It's about how we see ourselves within that world. It's about remembering that we already belong, not because of what we produce or what we prove, but because of who we are and how we show up. And sometimes the truest kind of vision begins when we finally allow ourselves to stop striving and simply rest in the truth. So maybe the real question out there, Nacho Knots, isn't just how we see, but whether we are willing to see differently. Are we brave enough to loosen our grip on the familiar stories we tell about ourselves and others? Can we look at the same landscape, the same relationships, the same routines, the same reflections, and let something new be revealed? Proust's challenge wasn't only poetic, it's deeply personal. To have new eyes means to let go of certainty. It means admitting that our first interpretation might not be the full picture. It means returning to people and places we thought we already knew, but returning with curiosity instead of assumption, returning with compassion instead of conclusion. And that is the hard work. And it's an extremely vulnerable job. But it's also how empathy grows roots. So here's your invitation, your moment to join in. Think of one thing in your life right now that you believe you've already figured out. Maybe it's a person, a place, a system, or even a part of yourself. Now ask yourself, what might I see differently if I approached it with new eyes? What if you imagined it not as a fixed truth, but as a living thing, still unfolding, still growing, still capable of surprise? And I want you to take a breath with that question. I want you to notice what stirs. And maybe the answer comes quietly, or maybe it won't come at all today or even tomorrow, but that's okay. The work isn't to solve it. It's to stay open to the asking. Because every time we pause long enough to wonder, we practice the art of seeing anew. So as we wrap up today's reflection on new eyes and belonging, I want to leave you with one question for weekly participation. What is one area of your life, big or small, where you are ready to see with new eyes? Again, it can be a relationship, a habit, a belief about yourself, or even the way you move through your daily routine. But this is about you. Where might a little curiosity, compassion, or courage help you see what's been there all along in a new light? And I want you to drop your reflection in the chat or in the comments right here on YouTube or over on Spotify if you're listening to us. I love reading your insights, and they help all of us grow together as a community. Just this weekend, I was reading through your comments about ripples after I celebrated the life of my father. And I thought, this is why I do what I do. This keeps me going. And so if you're there leaving your comment, remember to follow, like, subscribe, or share this episode with somebody who might need a little reminder that they already belong. They might need a little reminder that the world still has a new way of being seen, because that's how ripples spread. One reflection, one story, one pair of new eyes at a time. Now, what we've explored today, new eyes, belonging, reflection, and the work that grounds it all, really circles back to the heart of what we do here at NACHOS. Each episode is a kind of mirror, helping us to see our lives, our communities, and our own neurodiversity and neurodivergent stories in a fuller and clearer light. Today's conversation asked us to slow down and see the familiar as if for the first time, to treat our habits, our relationships, and even our sense of self as a living, changing thing worthy of curiosity, care, and compassion. We talked about how discovery isn't always out there somewhere. It's already here within the lives we're building, the connections we're tending, and the quiet self-awareness that grows when we pause long enough to listen. Whether it's through teaching, advocacy, caregiving, or simply, having a daily presence, this is the ongoing practice of neuroaffirmation, seeing every brain, every story, every spark of difference as part of a shared human mosaic. That's what NACHOS has always stood for. Conversation as care, reflection as resistance, and curiosity as community. We remind each other that our worth isn't earned through productivity, but discovered through presence. That rest and recalibration are not detours. They're necessary steps on the path towards balance and joy. So as you move through this week, keep practicing the art of new eyes. Let yourself be surprised. Let yourself be softened. Let yourself belong. Belong to your own story. Belong to your work. And belong to this growing community of nacho-knots who are learning one conversation at a time to see the world and themselves with deeper grace and care. So take a deep breath, nacho-knots. Let these next few moments settle in your chest like warm air meeting winter light. You are allowed to begin again, even in familiar spaces, even in routines that feel worn thin. There is room for discovery. The world hasn't stopped revealing itself to you. It's only waiting for you to look again. With new eyes, the ordinary can become holy, sacred, and the things you once overlooked start to shimmer with quiet possibility. You are not behind, and you are not broken. You are unfolding just as you are meant to. Every pause, every pivot, every moment of self-doubt is still part of your becoming. You don't need to search for a new landscape to find meaning. It's already here in the gentle work of showing up as yourself. You can choose to see differently today, to see your body not as a burden, but as a home. Your difference not as a flaw, but as a signal of your unique brilliance. You can look at your past not with shame, but with gratitude for the survival and the learning that it carried. You can look at your future not with fear, but with curiosity for what it might hold. Remember, new eyes don't erase what came before. They honor it. They let you see the same story with more compassion, more context, and more grace. So as you move through this week, whisper to yourself when the world feels dim. There is still beauty here. There is still something new to see, something new to discover, and I am still becoming the kind of person who notices it. That's the work. That's the discovery. That's the heart of NACHOS and the heart of all humanities courses ever. So as we close today, take one last quiet moment with me. Let the noise of the day settle. Feel your feet on the floor, the air in your lungs, and the small rhythm of being present. You've done enough for now. You've thought, you've reflected, and maybe even seen a little something a little differently than you saw it before. And that's more than enough for one day, for one morning. So as you move through the week ahead, keep that softness close. Look for the small moments that ask for new eyes. A light through a window, a familiar face, a mirror that reflects back a little more kindness than before. So thank you, Nacho Knots, for sharing this space and sharing this time and sharing this journey towards seeing and belonging together. Until next time, remember, the world is waiting to meet your gaze, and you are already part of the beauty worth noticing. So take care of yourselves and take care of each other. And as always, keep looking with new eyes.